Okay, hello again.
Hello, Todd.
So, do you want to share what's been going on in the past couple weeks since we spoke last?
Yes, I would love to do that because I don't know, I feel very, very excited to share what I found. I ran into Douglas Harding work, if you are familiar with On Having No Head. And
Yes.
then Richard Lang is very active now promoting the same like invitational. And when I saw that and I did those simple exercises, like I was so amazed of simplicity of it all. And then I'm like, yeah, this is very familiar. This is exactly what I've been experiencing so many times, but there was that doubt, right? And this is exactly what I'm referring when I told you that childhood memory that I had when I was 2 years old. That's it. And then they explained 4 stages of development, which blew my mind completely. And like I just feel that all puzzle pieces came came together. Like,
Beautiful.
yeah, of course, yeah, and because the doubt was the big issue for me, because this is so accessible with just pointing back to yourself, that perception changes. Like, what is here, you don't see your head, and that open space, that emptiness just shows up. And that's that perspective that we talked about, duck rabbit. It's
Yes.
just simply perspective. You point 180 degrees back to yourself, and there is nothing but empty space in which everything arises in that moment. The same trick, it's not the trick, but it's just pointing, like one eye. They have exercise called one eye. Like, you see two eyes here, but then when you go back to yourself, do you have two eyes? No, it's all one eye. So it's all encompassing. And the very like accessibility at any moment of the day makes me so happy, because there is no room for a doubt here. Any moment I can start, but then no, point back to yourself. 180, what is here? And you are your own authority. Like, nobody can experience this for anybody. But then when we share this, we see, yeah, you are coming from the same open space as I do. And then application of this seeing, oh my God, how can I ever have enemies? Like, we are coming all from the same space. Like, this is, now I understand. Like, we are one. Now I understand what it means. Now I can say, okay, nothingness and everythingness. I understand there is nothing here, but everything arises in there. So all that paradoxes, and then what I was hearing before, what you are looking for is what you are looking from. Like, so many things just make sense now, right? And just to mention this before we go further, what they are talking is those 4 stages of development. First stage of a baby is headless, like
Hmm.
this open space, because they don't have self-consciousness. They don't refer. It's all open, you know. And but what is exciting to me is we are all born like that. Nobody is special. Nobody, like all that dogma and all that cultural painting over it. Like, this is so simple and humane, and we all share it. So when we are born as young children, like, that's where we are, right? That open space. But then we have to develop, And as children, like they tell us, okay, this is who you are. You are female, you are girl, you are this nationality, you belong to this family, you belong to this country. This is, and we accept all that, which is fine. There is no mistake there, because we need that. We need to live in this society. We need to take responsibility for ourselves and others. We need to feed our children. We need to pay our bills. So it's not mistake. But then when we are adults, we get too rigid and put into that box. This is who I am. And we forget about this spaciousness. This is a natural state of being that we all lived from when we were young children. So how they explain is that young child, baby phase, then a child that is learning to okay, this is the distance from which others see me. So this is my face. I am this, I'm that, I'm female, these are my roles and all that. But the problem is when we are adults, we are stuck there, which is third phase. But then the fourth phase, which is perfectly natural, but not everybody is interested in that. And I feel we are very interested, whoever is interested in this topic, because it becomes too tight here. Because we put ourselves into that box and there is nothing else, and you feel, like I can't breathe here anymore, and it's time to, expand again, which is natural development of humanity. And I'm so excited about that. And now I realized, this is that what and it's so simple, and like I have zero doubt right now, because anytime I can just go back, like 2 seconds. Is it two eye or one eye? Okay, let me check. And it opens. It just opens. So anyway, that was what I was. And then anytime there is sensation that is not very pleasant, like I can give it this space. I can give this space. And also what Douglas Harding was talking about, which is so genius in my opinion, is, okay, this is how I look from a meter away.
Mm-hmm.
This is my face. This. You come closer. You come closer. What do you see? You just see a little bit of my face. Come closer, you see a patch of skin. Come closer, what do you see? You see cells. After cells, all you can see is molecules. After molecules, you see atoms. After that, subatomic particles. Like what is an atom? 99.99 empty space. And that would be that, in my imagination, that would be that quantum field that may manifest as a wave or particle. And I feel that's who we really are, our nature, that field with possibilities of manifesting. But then also, if we go further away, I'm not just this body, I'm my family. Then a little bit bigger, I'm this city. Then a bit bigger, I'm this country. And then a little bit bigger, this and nationality, and then the whole planet, and then after the planet, the whole galaxy, and so on and so on. So when we are talking who are we, it's just from what distance? What distance are we talking about? Like we are all that and none of that. And that identification, like what are we identifying with at, for example, you see how people identify with, oh, this is my family, and we feel so strong because that's identification. Then this is my city, so I cheer up for the hockey team or basketball team. I identify with my tribe, right? Then people lose lives over the nationality, like we against them. and so on and so on. And it was like I was just, everything was kind of, falling into place and started making sense. And yeah, I'm noting and I'm everything depending on the range. What distance are we talking about? And in this regard, like we are talking about zero distance
Yeah.
that nobody else can see. Nobody, just yourself. Like you can experience it. Zero distance. People can point to it, and we can exchange our experiences, which is beautiful, and then come to a conclusion that we all share it, and there is nothing special about that. I'm excited mainly about that because when you watch those videos and I know something that you don't know, this is pure democracy. This is putting
Yes.
us all on the same plane.
Yes.
Nobody is better than anybody else.
Nope.
We are just unique in the expression of it, but the
Yeah.
base is the same. Oh my God, I'm
It,
so excited
it's so
about this.
beautiful. I'm so happy for you.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
now you tell me, like I'm like, okay, I need to talk to Todd and see, like, am I and hear your input, how this rings the truth in me.
yes.
And this is like so beautiful, so clean, so simple. Like there is no dogma, there is no culture, nothing, just pure humanity.
Yes. And
Okay.
I'm a big fan of the Headless Way and Douglas Harding and Richard Lang, and I think you had a fantastic explanation of all of it. I think you have um what's the word? You've taken it in and I want to say syncretized, but I don't think that's the correct word. You've really
Digested.
you've digested it, and you're able to explain it so well. That's really fantastic. Um yeah. So I think you're kind of fortunate too, because with their stuff, it tends to be, some people can see it really easily and then they just go,
uh,
so what? And it's just kind of this, okay,
yeah,
yeah, I can't see
yeah.
my head, that's cool. And then other people take like you did, and it's like, oh, there's much deeper implication there that you know you can actually feel, like, and it's not just a conceptual thing. There's like a felt implication to it's like that experience when you were two or something like that, where it's just, you feel this openness and the truth of that. um I was trying to make notes and now I'm realizing I'm not sure I can read my handwriting. But um were you, so the couple little pitfalls that I just want to make sure that we're not falling
Okay.
into are the awareness trap again, of the identification, making sure that we don't come to that point of identification with the awareness, which is one thing where I have heard Richard Lang talk, and it kind of surprises me because I've actually heard him say that he is not, how did he put it, that he basically, he doesn't fully buy into the whole no self thing. So he very much identifies as the spaciousness, or as the
Mhm,
background, which is kind of that more Vedanta almost style of identification with awareness and that sort of thing.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but I think his actual, what he talks about in terms of getting
mhm,
to that point is incredibly useful for people. Um, so when you say that, like the quantum field, is
mhm.
our true nature or things like that,
Yeah.
how much personal identity is still invested in
Mhm.
that for you?
Yeah, let's unpack it. Yeah, I'm very interested in that too, because I really don't want to, go into some beliefs again. So none of this is personal. When I go, there is Absolutely nothing, nothing personal, nothing connected with my history, with my family, with my genes, with my experiences. Absolutely nothing.
Beautiful.
Nothing personal. And it's kind of more neutral. Like there is no preferences. I want this, I don't want that. It's all encompassing. So like not like, but it does feel very intimate, like familiar,
Yeah.
very familiar, but nothing personal. So I don't want to get caught into the concepts which I see everywhere. So we have to somehow talk about it, but
Yeah.
not to get, because I may describe the very same experience differently than someone else, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to get caught into description, because this is my language, this is my I'm brought in a certain way, this is my conditioning, and obviously I'm gonna kind of filter my description through what I have here, right? So yeah, experience is definitely, there is nothing personal, zero personal, but very familiar, very familiar. So can I call it? I don't know. That's my experience. What is it? Is it being? I don't know. Should we call it being? I don't know. Should we call it existence? Well, the life is here. We are living this life. So how are we gonna, we need to kind of come up to the terms, how are we gonna call it, you know? So yeah, if you can help me, like, I don't feel it's personal, zero, not personal, but very familiar, very familiar.
Well, and that's it. So, what you had said earlier is spot on that, like the baby starts out this way. It's not something where we have to ascend layer after layer after layer to become some Buddha on a lotus, floating in the sky. It's something that we always have, and we just build up all of these layers of identification and illusory beliefs that then cloud us and make us feel like we are this constricted little ball of personality in this tiny little body separate from everything else. And so all we're doing is just peeling off layer after layer of those illusions, just seeing through them until we get that back to what was always there, which was just that open, spacious, whatever. I'm not as concerned about the verbiage of what words we're using to describe it. It's more of the internal sensation of identification with it. So regardless of whether we call it awareness or being or consciousness or spaciousness or whatever else, the words are never going to be right. They're always
Yeah,
just going to be a label.
yeah.
The difference is that you can have very subtle levels of clinging to it where you go, and this is what kind of jumped out at me when you were talking, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, is there is a relief with that noticing of that sort of primordial openness. But when we immediately jump to things like, this is who we really are, this is who I really am, that sort of thing, implied in that is still this sense of I. There's still a sense that what I actually am is this big expanse of awareness. What we're talking about is actually, there just is no I. There is unnameable, expansive, whatever, but there's no identification at all with it. It's not what we are, what I am. It's just simply what is, without the feeling of ownership or identification of any sort with that ultimately.
I understand what you're saying. That would be Fetter 8, I guess.
It
By
would, but we want to, you know, make sure as we're
I
going through
understand.
that, yeah, that we're seeing any of these little associations. And it doesn't mean that, you know, like in Kevin's Fetter model, we generally wouldn't deal so much with that level of Fetter 8 identification until later on. But using Pernillas, you can work on all of this at the same time. So there is, I think, a lot of value in, if you see identification there, note it,
Yeah.
and it's like, in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of like Ramana Maharshi,
Mhm.
they would go right to the "who am I," that was really aiming straight for the Fetter 8 style, or Fetter 8 kind of identification. And they were kind of, going right to that, instead of going to the first Fetter kind of self, and breaking it down bit by bit, and then subject object duality. They were kind of aiming straight for the eighth Fetter to begin with. And it took longer for people, I think, a lot of times to do it that way, because they were just doing the basically the koan of, what am I, who am I, that sort of
Mhm.
inquiry. And then if it fell, a lot of times all these other ones would kind of fall with it, at least for a time, and they would get this big explosion. The way we do it is often much more subtle, because we're taking it illusion by illusion. And when you take out the first one, and then you take out, you work with doubt and the rites and rituals, and then desire and aversion, then subject object and perception. So we're doing it in a much more surgical way of dealing with these things individually, as opposed to just trying to take like a hammer at it and shatter the entire illusion with one blow. But that's also kind of how the Zen tradition was with the Rinzai Zen with their koans. It was also very similar, of you take one koan and you focus on it as hard as you can until you have this big awakening, and then, keep going after that. But
Yeah. What was the most exciting with discovering this Richard Lang and Douglas Harding is how simple it is. Because honest to God, I feel like I've wandered in so many different places that were leading me off the way because of all of that. That's why I'm so excited to find something as simple and so direct. Because maybe it was necessarily for me. Obviously, it was. If it
yeah,
happened, it was.
it was.
But like, why are we complicating life? Why are we making things so much harder? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's how it feels right now here. I don't know about that there may be some identification with this spaciousness. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how to look into it. If you don't mind, if in your experience, if what is experientially difference between when you were identified with that space and then when that dropped, if that dropped for you? Like, I'm just wondering in your personal
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Fetter 8 has dropped for me, but I've had glimpses without it, and it does
Okay.
feel very different when you experience things, because there is any sense of locality, inside outside, of it is disorienting in a way of,
Yeah.
we tend to still, even without the self illusion, there's still
Mhm.
a feeling of locality that we deal with Fetter 6. And so there's
Mhm.
still a feeling of being located in space somehow, being being at a certain point, at a distance from other things in our surroundings, right? And without that, then you still have this kind of very subtle inkling of a meanness or something there that feels still identified with this kind of spacious, non-localized awareness.
Mhm.
And if that falls away, and again, it's not a permanent thing for me at this point, but it really feels like there's just nothing
I wonder,
recognizable from
Todd, I know exactly what you are talking about because I experienced that. My question is now, is it even a point to live always like that? I mean, we have to live this life. We have to feed our children. Like how I can't imagine how would I go to pay my bills and like I need my locality in order to finish my humane role that I'm playing here. That's why I like this model. This is how I look like from for a meter or whatever. And this is my human circle. Yeah. And all of them are valid. I feel that in this spirituality, we are underplaying importance of our humanity, of our yes, we are but why is it a goal to be there all the time? I'm
well,
not
and,
sure.
and it's a very good question, but I would also question if that's coming from, if the question itself is coming from a place of fear and of a deflection of the ego that wants to preserve itself by any means of logic possible. So, I would say again, not being somebody who is living out of
Mhm,
that space all the time, I
mhm,
can only defer to other people who I have heard talk who are. And by all accounts, they are perfectly fully functional in society and have no problem taking care of any of their daily needs and paying bills, taking care of the family and
mhm,
all of that.
mhm, mhm,
Um, just their internal experience and their lack of suffering is testament to the fact that something changed. Even from an external standpoint, it might not be obvious. Nobody else seeing them might know that there was anything different about them.
mhm,
But internally, it feels very different from what they say.
mhm.
Anytime that, you know, especially knowing your past of kind of bouncing from one uh interest, like spiritual interest, to another,
Mhm.
it's a very easy thing for the mind to go and find its not new shiny object that is really
Yeah,
enticing and really
yeah,
exciting. And conceptually, like, I totally agree with you that the headless way is fantastic, and it does make a lot of sense, and it is, as you said, absolutely practical in daily life, that you can tune into it at any time. It's always there. But it can also be used again as a way of deterring or deflecting from actually having a permanent shift in experience, because it's saying, well, tell you what, I'll be a self most of the time, and then anytime that I need a break, I have this little vacation that I can go on and just feel this expansiveness, and it's like, okay, I can breathe again. I know I can disidentify from the situation. It's stressing me out. It's a nice breather, but then I can go on selfing through the rest of my day. And beware if that's the kind of hidden underlying motivation behind that.
yeah,
Whereas that's not necessarily, uh you don't need to settle for that. And you don't need to fear whether you're going to be functional or not, because by all accounts, I've never heard anybody speak who does this stuff, who has cleared all of the fetters, who has any problem really acclimating to society. There are little pitfalls, like, Christiana and Kevin have said about having to, learn how to judge distances differently based on, visual perceptual changes that happen and might be permanent. The
mhm,
need for, having to rely on clocks and stuff, because your sense of time can become so skewed that it's you need alarms and clocks to kind of keep track of things, and calendars. um but beyond that, the motivations of, it's not like you just give up all motivation for anything, or you know I mean, like Angelo does say, he could be perfectly happy just sitting staring at a wall all day, but he doesn't. He works as an anesthesiologist. He makes these videos every day. He has a family. He takes care of all of this stuff, but he does it presumably in this very light and open way. where none of that is relevant, you know.
Yeah, but at the same time, who does it, right?
Well, and that's the whole
And
point.
who actually decides what to do and what not to do? Like, oh my goodness, it's so strange how even though in this community, like we are talking about no self and we recognize no self, and then we still come again. I did this, I did that, and
Yes,
we give each other advice. You considered it. You,
yes.
like I'm like, oh,
It's
just
an irony because, well, we're talking on the two different levels. You have the relative level and the absolute level,
mm,
and we go back and forth between the two because on the absolute level, of course, there is nobody anywhere that's doing anything at all, and everything is just happening as it is, completely free of any sort of identification or selfing or any of that. On the sort of relative level, it seems like there's a Todd here having a conversation with a Tonka there, and we're having this exchange, and you are going to behave differently after having this talk. I am going to behave
mm,
differently after having this talk. You know, you have behaved very differently in this entire talk, having come across Douglas Harding and Richard Lang than you would have had you not come across them this week, right? So it's not that, you know, it really, what it points to is the fact that everything is interconnected to the point where every single every single interaction that happens, whether it's metabolically in the body, whether it's, you know, with things in the quote unquote external environment, with other people, thoughts that come into the mind, everything has some sort of cause and effect kind of relationship, but it's not a direct, this simply causes this. It's that there is this interwoven web of everything to where you cannot be separate from anything, and everything is affecting each other like a what do they call them, like a, you know, like a flock of starlets, or the, not the word, sorry. Do you know the birds that they have the why can I can't think of
they
the name
fly
right now.
together and they form
Yeah, and
a
they form
certain
these,
shape.
right? Yeah, each one is technically an individual, but they're all interacting in such a way that all of
Yeah.
them are creating this seemingly moving shape that's constantly changing. And it's the same
Mhm.
sort of idea that everything we do is constantly affecting everybody else, and we are constantly being affected by everyone else. So there's no, so if we go to a meeting like Vince's meeting, and I say to somebody, yeah, you should really try the see, hear, feel practice, and you should, do this, and it'll be great. That is only coming out because of the interaction that's there, because I'm there, they're there, they said something which brings about this. I can only say it because I've learned the see, hear, feel technique and know about it. They will not be able to do it if they've never heard of it before. Them hearing it might plant a seed for them to actually do it, but it's still not them doing it. It's just this constant interweaving of information and actions.
I can see that.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So
Yes, yes, it does. Then it makes sense that we are talking like this, you and me and this, because that's, if I remember correctly, Roger Costello was saying that we are a combination of our genes and our up-to-date conditioning. This is the key, up-to-date conditioning, because conditioning is changing all the time. This conversation is a part of my up-to-date conditioning. And as you said, every other experience is changing our up-to-date conditioning. And out of that, the new things come up, and all that up to conditioning here and there, they make something completely new, and it's very creative and can be very beautiful. And it may have nothing to do with me or you, meaning our the self. It's
yes,
just like we are from what I understand, like a system in
Yeah,
constant flux. It's a
exactly.
system. It's not. There is that's where that ignorance is coming from. That solidity. There is nothing solid. There is nothing permanent, and there is nothing like we want everything to feel good all the time.
Yes.
Not possible.
No, not
So
possible.
all that three things that we wanted, they don't exist, and that's where the problems start. And I guess once when we come to the peace with all that changing all the time, and no permanence, it's changing, and it won't be pleasant all the time either. So
No, no,
so
but we don't have to suffer because we don't
yeah,
have to
yeah,
have that identification with the unpleasantness. And then even
yeah,
the
I managed.
unpleasantness becomes
Mhm.
becomes rather neutral if you can experience it as it really is.
Yeah, pain and suffering are very different
Yeah.
from what I understand now. Yeah, pain, good luck being a human being and not having pain. But suffering is all that story that we add on top of that, right?
Yeah.
So we can be free of that storytelling, making it more painful for us. But this human experience, it is what it is, I guess. But
It
then,
is.
where all these people searching those peak experiences, like I think that's very, very misguiding, because everybody goes on online talking about peak experiences, and poor seekers are like, oh, where is my peak experience? I never had that. And then you get so lost in that.
It's exactly right. And that's why people start comparing their experiences. And that's why we have so much doubt of people saying, well, I don't know if I've had a shift. I don't know if I've seen through no self because I don't see it. It feels like things have changed, but I haven't had this huge fireworks explosion that other people talk about. And
Yeah.
so then you start doubting, well, maybe I didn't actually have it. Maybe that's not what they're talking about. But realistically, as we said before, it's just a dropping of illusion. And so as people frequently use the analogy of finding out that, or just realizing that Santa Claus isn't real, or whatever other illusion you want to find,
Mhm.
just dropping that, it doesn't mean that you have this massive explosion in your experience. It's just something changes and you can't go back to believing something that you once believed. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Um, One thing I did want to go back to say though before that is, because I think this is really important to notice in terms of like the no self stuff. When we were saying about being, this kind of system, I don't know if you've noticed, you can be around different people in your life and you can be a very different person around different people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so even if, you know, you plus a romantic partner could be in a very different expression than you with a child, you in a business setting, you with a parent, whoever it is. It's like I think of like sodium. If you have sodium by itself, and as I recall from
Mhm.
high school science, sodium is very volatile with water, right? By itself, you
Mhm.
like explodes.
Dissolves.
But if you have sodium chloride together, you have
Mhm.
table salt and it becomes this completely inert thing. So, we humans are, and of course, I apologize to any people out there if that was a completely wrong scientific, categorization of sodium. It's been a long time, but the point is, if you have different people, coming together, the way that we interact can be so different from moment to moment, depending on who we are, and yet we completely overlook the fact that there's such a change there, and we just think, well, that's just me. I'm always me. It's the same me all the time, and that's the sort of thing that we're investigating with the first fetter. are you really the same person all the time? Do you notice your experience and how it shifts so much, and how you say things with one person you would never say with another person? You think things around one, you feel things around one, you behave completely differently. You might even look differently around the other person. Like, there's so much about our experience that really changes depending on who we're with in that moment. And those are the things that are really helpful to just note throughout our day and recognize, because it helps
Yeah.
weaken that sense of permanent narrative self.
Yeah, it reminds me of like I have a little granddaughter now, and I guess she lives in that headless space, that openness. And when I'm with her, it's like she gives me permission to be headless myself. And the
Yes.
way I behave with her, like I'm making all kinds of noise, I'm jumping, I'm being silly, and I enjoy it so much. So I would never be like that with an adult. Like,
Yes.
but being with her gives me permission to be like that, you know. So obviously, I won't be behaving like that at my workplace.
But do you notice, is there a sense of identity about that? This is me there, and then this is me with the
No,
grandkid, and this is me
no,
with work.
no, no,
So
no, no.
do,
It's just a play.
good. Does it feel like there's any consistency there? Like, what is it now that, in talking about those times of feeling headless with her, do you feel is consistent?
Okay, I certainly feel some situations more enjoyable than others, no question there. But at the same time, there is expression is different.
Well, let's look.
Expression is different. Yeah, what arises is different. But I feel that stillness, there is some stillness, kind of okay, I have to use the word to try to describe it, like a witness. There is it's not that I don't know, maybe I do identify with the witness, but there is something that notices. Like, how could I ever report that experience with my granddaughter if something didn't register that? No?
Well, that's something to investigate. So
Yeah.
we will come back to this. Let me just make notes so I don't forget to. Oh, the pen is running out. Um, let me come back to that in a minute. But before that, so right now, like going right to your direct experience. So
Mhm.
you have how you feel at this moment at 12:15 in the afternoon in this body, in this space. Right now, what feels related to or connected from, or uh when you talk about that being with the grandchild and having the permission to be open and headless and spacious and goofing around in ways that you wouldn't right now, what feels like that was you then?
Mm.
Do you know what I'm asking? How do
Mhm.
you know that that was ever you? Where does that feeling of identification lie in you right now?
Mm. I can't really know that.
Well, feel into that. Like, go into your direct experience right now. And what is it about when you think of that memory? Can you find anywhere in you that says, yes, that was me a week ago or however long ago in that situation?
It's a memory, it's a thought.
It is, but don't just stop with that, because that's like another thought that just says, okay, it's a thought, and then I'm just gonna be done. Like, I want you to
Mhm.
really feel into your experience right now. Like, go into the body,
Feel like sensation
feel
wise.
feel into sensation, look for anything beyond a thought. What is it that feels like it's drawing? a consistent thread from that moment to this moment, that you can recognize, oh, there is something about me that is like this now. I remember being different then, but that was still me. Or, then I remember going to work the next day and being very stoic and not acting like that. And I noticed the change. I was aware of all of that. Right now, looking back on all of that and then looking into the body now, where is the difference? What feels like it's different now than it was then, but is consistent to all of that? Do you know? Is that clear what I'm asking?
Um, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I don't see any sensation that I would say was there and is here right now. Like I can see my story that I just told you, but now I see it is a story, and I can't even guarantee. I can't even I can't even know for sure that was me, or it just appeared as a story. I kind of liked the story. I liked the flavor of the story, and I felt an urge to share it because I felt an innocence and playfulness, and I just felt like sharing it. Was it me? I don't know. It just appeared.
You're correct. I mean, it's very true. The fact that it's just a thought that just appeared and there is absolutely no way to tell if it ever happened at all.
It's image. It's more image, like mental image, than it's narrating of the story. It's just an image that I find beautiful and I wanted to share. Everything else, I don't know if it's detached from true or not, and I don't even know anymore if we can say that anything is true.
That is something that we're aiming towards. Yeah, that is a big insight. But does something feel different in the moment right now when you recognize that that memory is just a thought that can't be verified?
It feels light, very light. Yeah, there is no heaviness. It's just very airy.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. So really experience that. When you experience these moments, don't just take them and write them off as, oh well, that's an interesting thing, that's just a thought. Notice the physical changes that accompany it. Notice that
Okay.
feeling, because that's
Environment is melting, thought. Right now, environment is melting, and uh, like solidness of uh, objects in my room, they're just melting right now,
right now.
right now. Like I can kind of see, okay, this is TV, this is the couch, but it blends in. It's not like sharp edges at all. It's like just, and it's getting brighter now and brighter.
Beautiful. Just stay open. Just stay with that. Is there any sense of the one witnessing it right now?
No,
Can you feel a
it's like
separation?
a painting. It's like a
Nice.
painting. And this body is part of the painting. I can kind of see my arms but they are kind of part of it.
Beautiful. Stay in just that experience. If thought comes in, just let it pass by. Just notice it, but don't attach to it. Just be with the actual experience right now.
Your screen is so bright, and your face is like a sun beaming.
Is there any sense of separation between where you are and where the other objects in the room are? Are they at a distance?
Yeah. No distance. Like distance doesn't even make sense here.
Amazing. Just stay there. There is nothing but this experience. Any memory is just a thought. Any future projection is a thought. And any concept is just a thought. This is
Can
what's
you
here
live from
without
here,
thoughts.
Todd? Can you live from this?
Don't worry about that.
You
That's just
see, like
fear.
my
That's just fear.
yeah. I do get that. Like I have stuff to do.
You'll do it. There's there there never was a you, and yet things have always been done. You've always been doing a job just under the illusion that there was somebody there doing it. So even if that illusion is gone, you're still going to be there to do the job is still being done. There's just isn't the layer of identification as somebody else who is doing it. It's like if you had a factory with a bunch of machines doing the work, and you decided that one of those machines that's, building a car is named Fred. And you create this whole elaborate story about this machine called Fred. And you build up a past history and you build up all of these hopes and dreams for this machine. And meanwhile, it's just going about doing its thing, building cars. And then somebody points out to you after you have all this emotional investment in this machine that you've named Fred, that, that's just a machine. They're just metal parts that are all screwed together running this program that somebody, typed the code into, and everything that you have been laying on it is just an illusion. And then you go, oh, right. That's just a machine. It doesn't stop doing its job. It's just doing the same thing it was always doing without the layers of narrative and identity that you or somebody else, laid upon it. So you'll still function just fine. You're just doing it from a place of less identification, more spaciousness, and less suffering.
I can see how there was some fear of me not being able to fulfill my obligations.
Yeah.
If I completely let go.
It's safe to let go.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for reminding me that. That's why I told you more and more. I believe it's important to have some kind of community, people that encourage each other, support each other, hold space for each other. It's priceless.
I agree 100%.
Mhm.
Especially at the risk of personifying the ego, it does seem like in the process there is something that is very fearful of being seen through, of being let go of. And there is a certain feeling of impending death because, you have this identity, and ultimately that identification dies, it falls away. And that can be very frightening for it. And so it will set up, and again, we're personifying it, but this fear comes up that tries to block the process from happening. It tries to put obstacles in your way to say, well, no, why don't you just go watch another video? Why don't you just, go, maybe you should just go to work. Maybe you haven't earned enough money this week. Maybe you get some extra hours in, go, oh, your garden needs to be weeded. Go weed the garden, do the thing, and don't look here. Don't look here. Go look over there. Or are you going to be able to do this thing? It sends up all these little doubtful fear thoughts. Am I going to fall apart? Am I just going to want to go to a cave and live, off of moss for the rest of my life? Like, it's just a diversion. It's just a distraction.
Yeah, my other fear is because I work in retirement home and I deal with people with dementia on daily basis. So one fear that comes to me is like, oh my goodness, am I gonna lose my mind by like my residents there? Like, because it's, I see it and it's kind of, and I'm like, am I damaging my brain? Am I gonna get Alzheimer's?
I don't think that anybody has done scientific studies on the rates of Alzheimer's with people who have woken up, but I think
Yeah,
it's
that would be
I don't think there's
interesting.
enough people to have done those studies. But yeah, I can't really comment on that. I internally it feels very wrong to me to think that that would be the case, especially going back to what we talked about at the beginning, where it's something that was already our state.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
something that's always been there. I think there are the maybe the confounding factor is that there are brain changes that happen. And we could say that to a certain extent, most likely, what is happening when you are a child and you are experiencing these things with this kind of openness, it's because the brain is in a certain state at that point. The connections have not all been trimmed back yet. Things are um, things are less. Things in the brain start out less. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, my my language is not doing well today. Um, they're less specified, to begin with. Things are there's a lot more interconnectivity between the brain, and then as you get older, the connections start to get pared down to what is most relevant for the way that you behave in the world. And so if you are, a musician, there are certain things with your coordination, your hearing sense that are going to be heightened. Then if
Mhm.
if you're blind, then other parts, the visual cortex is going to be allocated for something else. And the brain is very plastic, trying to constantly adjust itself to whatever we are, basically whatever we're doing in life. And there does seem to be something involved with long-term meditators, people who do a lot of that sort of thing. It does change the basic functioning of the brain for the better. I mean, it actually tends to show that we have less likelihood of a lot of these kind of problems further down the road, um, as well as a lot better emotional regulation and things like that. But there are changes that are visible between long-term meditators and people who have never meditated when you look at their brains on a scan. So there are brain changes that are happening, and so many of the things that people experience in peak experiences of the awakening type or peak psychedelic experiences, all of that do seem to have to do with like the default mode network regions of the brain. And so I think there is something where what we're doing is causing actual physical changes in the brain as well as something else. Now, whether it's that it's getting it back to a state that's closer to childhood, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly, but it does seem when you take certain regions offline, certain experiences that people have are there. When you have, a lot of selfing and that feeling of being a me and the location in the world and a sense of time and all of that, that's all related to, to reproducible changes in parts of the brain that you can either stimulate or turn off. And so, you know, I'm always very agnostic about how much is biological in the brain, how much is energetic, how much is something else. I think it's a fascinating topic that we just haven't explored enough yet. We don't have enough information to come down on any of it. We just know that there are certain practices that work for certain people. And so we can recommend different practices that might work, and direct pointing throughout the past couple thousand years seems to be the most reliable way of having this awakening experience that can really change people's existence for the better.
Yeah, I think it's all a mystery, and whoever claims to know what it is, I think it's is very ignorant,
That's
right?
it.
And when you
Absolutely.
think about that, what can we know with our five senses and thinking, if we include that sixth sense? What can we know? Like our smell comparing to the dogs, or our vision comparing to, like, we are so limited with our senses, and then to claim that we can know what the mystery of life is
Right.
funny. But at the same time, like this, not identifying with our five or six senses, that's the key from what I can tell. Yes, we have to live. This is life is expressing through these six senses here. But do I have to identify with that? Is there something deeper? Where is that zero distance? So I think realizing this zero distance makes life easier, more enjoyable, and definitely we are better for others. Like Richard Lang, I heard him talking about face to no face. It's beautiful. I don't know if you are familiar. So
I
when
have,
you are
yeah.
talking to people, like, because you are space for another, you take that person's face, meaning you are space for that person. So how can you be in conflict? There is no two faces in a conflict. If you are open space, you can receive another the way that they are. I
Right.
don't need to change anybody. I can allow everybody to be whatever they are. So if all of us would live from that point, how
Mhm.
could there be any conflict and war and hurting others? And how could we ever do that? So implications are huge, and I think that's all we can do, like to try to live from and it's not even spiritual, it's practical. It's that would bring more compassion for others, because then you realize, if I'm living from the same space as others are, like, then now I understand when they say we are one. Before I couldn't understand, what do you mean we are one? Where? How? Like, yes, we are unique expressions, but now I understand what they mean when they say we are one. Anyways, like but all these things, because we've been conditioned so much. I'm female. I'm this age, I'm this color, I'm this nationality, I'm playing these roles, because we've been conditioned so deeply into all of that. Now we have to kind of recondition ourselves and spend time. At least I feel that's what I've been doing. So bringing back to this zero distance,
Yeah.
and just to remind ourselves. So I'm trying to do that in the morning, so then I can function more, like that. And anytime I remember, I do that, because it is now another conditioning or reconditioning, or like getting back. And I think having time to talk to people that have similar interests and to kind of encourage each other is very, very important, because I feel if I had that before, I would be much, much better off. And having communities like that, and to remind us, and it's the best to have in real life around if possible. But then, anyways, that's
Yeah, there's still so much that can be gotten at from having virtual communities too. I mean, we've had like Liberation Unleashed has been incredible for having people be able to get together who would never have met otherwise. You know, there are a lot of people that don't have anybody in their areas doing anything like
yeah,
this. Like here, we have some Buddhist groups and some meditation groups, but nothing that does anything that I'm aware of that I've come across at all over the years that would be this sort of direct pointing, working with things. You know, it's more of just meditate for 40 years and see if something happens. You know,
yeah,
that's all
40
it's at.
years is too long.
It is, yeah, and I think that's what's so potent about now having this worldwide interconnectivity of being able
Yeah,
to
yeah. Yeah, internet is amazing,
uh,
amazing. It opens so many different doors, and
it does. Yeah, so we're very, very fortunate to be living right now with these opportunities. So, but I'm curious now. So going back to the direct experience, right now, tune into the body, and what is different now than it was, or actually, I'm going to rephrase that. What is the same now as it was, I don't know, 10 minutes ago when we were talking and you were sitting there having that um, experience of objects in the room losing their boundaries and their shape.
Mhm. Yeah, when we talked a few minutes ago, like I felt like there was a little bit of closing down, and now when you reminded me, I started opening again.
Nice.
So
And
that it seems to be just contraction, expansion, as depending on where the focus is.
yeah. So notice that. So if coming back into thoughts causes this feeling of contraction, this kind of self-identification again, notice when that's happening. So now can you go back to, well, before we even do that, just as when I had asked you if there was anything consistent between this moment and when you had that memory of being with the grandchild, and you had that realization that it was just a memory and there was no way to tell that it ever happened, and you said you felt light and open with that realization. Can you find anything now that indicates that that 10-minute ago experience that you experienced ever happened? If it wasn't for
No,
me mentioning it, where in your experience now was that?
no, no, we can't go there. It's just a thought, just a thought. just memory, which is, there is not even time here then.
And can you tell the difference between a memory and any other thought?
No.
Really feel into
So,
that. Let the ramification of that really settle into the body. Is there any way to tell the difference between a memory and any other thought?
yeah, not really. I spend a lot of time looking into what is thinking and what is the content of thinking when we, at very beginning, when we were talking, and that was a big aha, because I was just thinking is thinking, but I could see that thinking is just a process, but the content of what is being taught about is different.
Yeah.
So it's just the content, same as the content of this space is constantly changing, but the space is here. Thinking is always thinking, but the content of thoughts is different. And what I was noticing lately a few times, my mind started spinning, like my thinking I wasn't happy about something, and I started feeling a sensation in my body, and then it kind of woke me out of. I'm like, oh my, stop, 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 stop! It was like a red light. Stop, stop right here. And I could kind of, like it was like a break on time. And I could see how, if I didn't pay attention to that sensation in my body, how it could end up, God knows where, how far, But that sensation was God sent, because it was like stop sign.
Fantastic.
Stop right here and see what's happening. And then I could see my selfing was, like ridiculous. Like it was like all about me, 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 me. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. It's so helpful to be in the body, to have that sense
It
of,
is
yeah,
to
isn't it
stop
incredible?
us,
Yeah.
because thinking is so subtle that I wouldn't notice it, but sensations are more like they are stronger, they are more substantial. You feel them, right? And that it's beautiful to kind of have them to just warn you, hey, careful, careful.
Yeah, they tell us, I mean, there are indications for absolutely everything that are happening in the body. And if we
Mhm.
are only lost in thought, we miss so many cues and signals about what we should or shouldn't be doing in the world, or could or couldn't be doing. And um, so much of the self-identification comes just in getting lost in these thoughts and being completely identified with them and not realizing. And so anytime that we notice identification with thoughts, coming back into the body, back into the sensations, because the sensations ground us into the moment too. Thoughts are very rarely about what's happening right now. They're usually about some other hypothetical point of time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sensations always happen right now.
For
So
sure. Yeah, so I can see how meditation and spending time in silence can be beneficial for us to just spend some time getting more familiar and bringing us back into the body, because we live so much from our head and neglect everything in the body. So that time spent in silence and meditation kind of, I think, builds up the skill of recognizing that sensation when it comes. Even though I couldn't see my thinking, because I guess I was too involved in it, but I could recognize that my body was off. So I paid attention to it. But I think if we don't spend time in silence and meditate, at least I'm talking from my experience, that builds up that skill of recognition of what's happening in your body at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everybody's different in terms of some people have a really good experience of, or a really good awareness of their body, and other people have absolutely no way to feel into it whatsoever. And so for those people, we really have to do more work just to be able to even sense the body and recognize it, because some people don't even feel emotions really in the body. They're not aware of the fact that emotions are being displayed throughout the body. And it's like very new information for some people when they hear that an emotion is a physical sensation and a thought or a label about it. And that's like, no, I don't feel emotions in my body. Really? Well, let's explore that. So, yeah, so that's so good. I'm so glad that you're more and more in tune with that. Um, so for right now, in the moment, tuning in with the body again, is there anything that feels like a self right now? Is there something that feels contracted,
Not
something
now.
that feels identified with?
No, not now.
Have you had any over the course of the past week or two?
I did a few times. It seems if there is a lot going on, which there is at the moment, like I need to move soon, I need to rent out my place, I have to buy a car, things outside are changing, and there is so many things that I need to think about and get done. But it is relatively calm, like there is no a lot of worrying about that. But I see when there is few people that worry a lot around me, and I notice that I can get pulled into that easily. But then when I recognize, I can pull myself back out. But I'm very, very I'm very influenced by my environment, and I can see that I can benefit from some work around that. I'm very capable of being in this zero distance place by myself, and I do spend a lot of time by myself, and I enjoy it very much, to the point that I'm a little bit, am I going too far into this? Because I'm almost looking forward to leave everybody and come home and be by myself like, I enjoy it. I just love it. There is nobody to disturb.
Well, here's another question. So that brings up a really good question, though. So can you
Yeah,
be in that space with other people?
I try, and a lot of times uh, I am, but at the same time, I feel I'm not contributing to anything. There was like a gathering, and people were so involved with their opinions on different subjects, and I was just looking, and I was like, there was no need to say anything, and it was almost like, but then I'm like, oh my goodness, like I need to contribute here, but I didn't know how to contribute. It was kind of weird, because I felt anything I say won't be sincere, but at the same time I felt like, okay, you are sitting here with a group of loving friends, like, what are you doing? You are like a chair, like not contributing in some way. So that was kind of.
So here's what I'd like you to explore, and we can even try this now. So can you go to that space of that direct experience, expansive, zero distance space where you don't particularly feel like you have anything to contribute or anything to say.
Yeah.
Right. So do that now. Feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Feel into that. And if I'm here just having a conversation with myself, just talking about how the day is, it's very lovely. It's sunny. I can hear the birds from outside. It's very nice. And you're still in your little expansiveness. And I can see the plants over there, and there's a throw on the couch, and it's, I'm just observing all of these little things around the room, and I'm just talking, and you're in your own space. But then I suddenly ask you, so what are you going to do for the rest of the day? Now, notice when you go into either, there's nothing like either being in that open space of not saying anything and not feeling you have to say anything. When I turn and I ask you a question and ask you for an answer to it, can you feel a contraction? Can you feel what changes in order to go from being this spacious awareness where you don't have to contribute anything to then having to give an answer based on a prediction of what you're going to do for the rest of your day? Can you feel into changes in the body, in mental perceptions, thoughts, any of that? Can you feel what changes in that moment?
Yeah, there is a search for words. There is a search. I can sense the looking for an answer.
You feel anything different in the body? Go back to the spacious awareness again. Go back to the direct.
There is contraction for sure.
Okay. Where is that contraction?
Like more chest area, torso, kind of.
And is that contraction, can you feel into that contraction right now?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. Is that contraction in any way indicative of a self? Does the contraction feel like me?
Yeah. But there is association,
Hmm.
some kind of association.
Can you feel into that association? What is that? Dig into that. How is that association created?
Feels like it's like referencing throughout the years. It was like I feel it's whatever was happening would come back to this and referencing every experience to this. And that became over the years experience there, reference to here, and all that. It just feels like it was built over the years and it feels more solid because of all the years of referencing.
Such a good insight.
Mm.
So can you feel the mechanism that is trying to make that association in the moment? Can you feel a certain thought that's associated with it, or a certain type of thinking that associates with it? How do you, if you have just sensation in the chest, can the sensation in the chest by itself have any sort of association of its own volition or of its own nature? Can sensation have association? by itself?
No, I just had a vision, like mental image of arrow coming back to me. That's why I reported that. It was just a vision, mental vision of coming back. It was like referring. I guess that's what being self-conscious means. Like making yourself into something, everything around us referencing to this one. And I think that sensation that's how it feels like, more energetically, like something that was built throughout that process.
Good.
Even
That,
though doesn't matter anything that was going on around me, okay, how does it affect me? What about me? Even though it could have had nothing to do with me, but it always brings, is it enhancing me, or and if it's none of it and it's not, that's pure sensing, that's pure and that's how I guess selfing comes. If you can give me something, I'm interested in you. If you can take something out of me, I'm interested, because you may be my danger to this one. And if neither one is the case, then you are not interesting at all. So that may be that evolution, that kind of, that animalistic kind of, is it dangerous? Is it safe? Can you enhance my life? Can you, like, now I'm going into, explanation, but it
yes.
would make sense for an individual as a biological being that wants to protect itself to function that way. But I feel that's okay as long as we don't identify with that. So
Yeah, if it's yeah, yeah. I mean, I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think that's probably a pretty good instinct. And yes, ultimately, all of these things are just happening, and there is nobody there to identify. But coming back,
tendencies, there is some tendencies
there are
there.
tendencies, yeah. But coming back beyond that to that first layer of, you had this sensation in the chest of contraction, you have an association with it of all of these years of coming back to that and referring back to that as a sort of an indication of your existence, that this is me. Can we look more into what it is to have an association? We can label it as a thought, that's obvious, but go beyond just the label. When we say that there is an association with a feeling, turn into your direct experience right now. Don't even worry about the words that you're giving as an answer. What is it in your experience to have an association of anything with those physical sensations?
It's just a sensation, and the reason that it's associated, it feels more local.
Feels more local?
Yeah.
Okay, but how does the association happen? When we talk about an association with something, where is that happening?
It's very close. It feels closer than the rest of like visual experience, hearing. It feels kind of closer to that 0 point. It feels more. It feels like it's less distant.
Good. I can completely understand that. Now, that being the case, how does that feeling of close sensation become the idea that it's me, or it is an extension of me, or a proof that I exist?
For example, right now I can see outlining of my body, like nothing, no sharp lines, but just kind of outlining, and that sensation is in the middle of it. And I guess because there is association with the body, and this feels kind of in the body, that's why it feels like me.
Okay, close your eyes for a second. Just feeling into that sensation, wherever it appears in a sort of spatial relation to whatever it is that seems to be experiencing it. Is there some element of that sensation that can be associated with a self?
No, it may be belief.
And so, can you find the thoughts that come up that are trying to link it to a past history of feeling like an indicator of it being you?
Feels like it's been with me for a long time. It feels familiar.
Okay. Is there any way to tell that this sensation hasn't just happened for the first time right now without resorting to a thought? Because just as we have discovered a couple times today, you can't even be sure that the moments with your grandchild, or that the experience of the boundaries melting ever happened, and that they weren't just thoughts. How do you know right now that you have ever experienced this contraction in the chest before?
There is a memory.
Okay, good. Good. And the external container of memory is still just thought, as we have indicated. And then the contents of that thought are, in this case, what? What would you say the contents of that thought are?
I can't find any now. It's gone.
Good. So come back to that sensation in the chest.
That changed too.
How is it how is it showing up now?
Less solid.
Okay. And if I ask you about, if I say, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get to work today? What happens to that sensation?
Mm. Sensation is not changing. I just feel like I'm searching for an answer in my mind.
Good. And what does that process of searching feel like?
feels like I have magnifying glass looking for a toad.
Do you see this, like, are there visual images going
Visual,
through?
visual, like it's from cartoons and stuff that just pop in, like looking for something. Probably I've seen those images somewhere and then they just pop up as presentation of what looking looks like.
You get a feel for what it is that seems to be doing the looking.
It's almost like I'm panicking, like I need an answer, need an answer. It's maybe that this is where that fear comes from. It's like I need to know what's going on.
Mm. And so where is that felt? That need to know.
It's more like a thought comes in and says, I need to know.
Good. And why is it a believable thought?
Well, there is some kind of responsibility that I feel to, if someone is asking me a question, I need to answer.
Is that felt in the body, or is that responsibility yet another thought?
It's a thought, but there is a movement. Like when I'm at that 0 point, there is no movement, it's just stillness. But as soon as I feel there is a need to get involved with life, movement comes in.
And you feel when somebody asks you for an answer and you feel like you have a responsibility to answer, and there is that sort of movement. Can you feel anything in the body that is precipitating that movement? Is there a certain energetic state in the body, a certain group of sensations that seem to precipitate that movement?
So hard to talk these things because they just don't last long enough.
Okay, so
It's
go
almost
back.
like by the time I'm ready to answer the question, it's kind of different.
Yeah, and this is all, It's all in the very quick noticing when it happens. So now go to that direct experience, that zero distance place.
Mhm.
How many coworkers do you have?
Right now,
Well, notice what happened in the body. Did anything change in the body between when you were in the zero distance and when I asked that question?
nothing changed, just a thought came right now, but nothing really changed.
What was the thought that came?
I thought, like, does thought think right now, or like actually how many people I work with? Like, just the need to clarify the question. Are we talking about
Hmm,
this very moment? Right here, there is no co-workers.
it's true. I was really using the question more just to spur that sense of having to search for an answer related to
Oh,
you and yourself.
I think it's very fast. It's just that I have a mental images that kind of pop up, and then I make a story about those images. That's how it feels like here.
It's very possible. Notice also, though, while you are at work and in your daily life, when you're doing these things, really be in the body, noticing it for absolutely any physical changes, and see if you can get um, really subtle with your awareness of if when a thought arises, if it brings a really brief little change in the body, or if there's a really brief little change in the body that then seems to spark a thought. And the more finely tuned you can be to that sort of thing, the more you'll notice what it is like to go from being expansive into selfing. I think you have a good indication of what it feels like when you're there, but I think it's really interesting to find what it's like in that transition between the two. When you go between just being open and expansive and then having that contraction happen, where exactly in there does it seem to be that there is no self and then all of a sudden a self arises? Where in the experience of thought or physical sensation does a self seem to arise? And how is it known? So if you go right now back to that zero distance, expansive sensation, Pay very close attention to the physical sensations happening in the body. Where are you going to move to when you have to move? Don't answer the question, but notice if me asking it changed anything in the body.
Way that it feels for me nowadays. Right now, everything is open. There is no lines, there is no division. Sensations are here, they are here, thoughts are here, hearing is happening, everything is here. It's just not contained or put into any boxes, into any body, into. But then when we start talking about practical things, it seems that almost a mental image of the body is, I'm trying to explain it, but it seems that things shrink. That's how things just shrink. And it's not as big anymore. It's more focused. It's focused, like this is very defocusing panoramic view. And then when we start talking about practicalities, things focus and become smaller in that sense. It's just that it's not as a large of a view. It's more laser, not necessarily laser. It may be much bigger than that, but it's just focus of attention.
Beautifully seen. Now, is there anything in that focused view that feels more like a self than the more expansive, unfocused view?
Not as a self. It's just what it feels natural, meaning like same as the weather changes, the focus changes. It's just a natural movement of things. Whatever is required, it feels that sometimes focus is required and sometimes defocusing is required. And it all comes as needed.
Good. And you don't feel any more identification with the focused version than the unfocused.
Doesn't feel personal.
Yeah. So throughout the day, see if you can be in that open, spacious, zero distance place as much as possible. And then stay aware in the body as you're interacting with people. If anything does change, if anything comes up, and be aware if there does seem to be something that feels a bit more identified or a bit personal about those sensations or about the thoughts that come up accompanying those sensations. And just be very curious of the process. I think that'll be incredibly useful because you're doing so, so well.
So to notice the sensations that are changing when I'm interacting with people, what's happening. That's my homework.
It is. And notice if there's any sort of identification, any sort of thoughts that come up identifying with it, and see if you can find anything there. Anytime, and likewise, anytime throughout the days or weeks when you feel like um, there is some selfing going on, like when you are dealing with all of these issues, that you have to focus on with job and car and all of that stuff. Notice if there is worry, if you're picking up stuff from other people worrying, but does that worry feel identified? Where is the selfing in that worry? Is there a sensation in the body that we call anxiety or something like that? Where is the actual selfing involved? And how does that manifest for you?
I'll do that. And I noticed how, I don't know where I heard it, but it was so clear before our meeting. I felt a little bit of, I don't know, excitement, anxiety. And then I noticed, okay, this is, yeah, I can call this excitement, and it will have positive connotation. Like I'm looking forward to talk to Todd, but then if I label it, this is anxiety, it has such a negative connotation, and it's the same sensation.
It is.
It's the same sensation. So like it's not that we can affect outside life, but definitely we can affect how we perceive things by labeling it with positive or negative connotations, and it's the same experience.
Exactly.
Like it was very clear because as I was waiting for our meeting, I noticed that, and it was, yeah, okay, I'll call it excitement.
And that's why when we come back to just sensations and out of the mind and out of the thoughts, all we have are these just more or less neutral sensations. Everything else that's put on them, labeling them, contextualizing them, liking them or disliking them, all thought.
Yeah, and that's another thing, understanding when people would say we give things a meaning. That's obviously how we do that. Like,
Yeah, we absolutely do. Really well done. Really well done.
oh, thank you very much, Todd. Like this means the world to me because you encouraged me to let go and go deeper into it because I would just run into barrier and it would scare me off and I would you know, like, but this is like actually I have courage to explore things deeper and deeper. Yeah, that's awesome.
Beautiful. It is. Yeah, you're safe and you're supported and you can absolutely just investigate these things. They won't hurt you. There's fear trying to maintain that same status quo that has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
But if it changes, things generally get significantly better. All right. Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording and then we'll say goodbye. Okay. Anything
Okay.
else? Anything else before we wrap up? I know I'm mindful of the time.
No, feels complete for today.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.